So I'm Benjamin Hubert. I'm the founder of Leia, a strategic design agency in London. So my introduction to Cosentino started in Spain, visiting Almeria, going to the factory and seeing how they make their materials. We were introduced to a material called Decton. Decton is a material that does what Mother Nature does, but quicker, more efficient, under intense pressure. Time is a matter of hours rather than millions of years. Our installation, Ray Trace, is a direct response to the process Cosentino use and the material they create in Decton. So we take the idea of light, the way that light travels through water, through a droplet of water, and creates a caustic effect. We take the idea of water, we take the idea of architecture, two things important to the process and the application of Decton, and we combine it into our installation, really inspired by the size of the Decton slab. So the idea of bringing back water, bringing back the outside, bringing back light, all the things that create nature around us and shape it. We like the idea that it can also shape Decton again. So Ray Trace is housed in an arch, in a vault in Centrale. We encourage people to touch the material, to interact with the furniture. The lighting effect will bring out the texture and the pattern of the Decton material. We want to delight, we want to make people smile. We want people to come in and be surprised at the size, gravitas, and material qualities of Decton.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I wish I spoke Turkish, then I'd understand what the introduction was about. So I'm going to give you my own little introduction before I talk about Leia. I think it's important to introduce myself. So I'm Benjamin Hubert. I'm the founder and creative director of Leia. Leia is a strategic design agency in London. I'm also creative director and founder of a tech brand called Noli, which I'll talk about later. But we're going to sort of go through a big range of projects today. So 12, 13, 14 projects. Some of them I'll go deeply into. Some of them I'll just touch on. But before we pick up the Leia story, before we talk about the projects, I just want to tell you a little bit about my background. So from the beginning, I come from very, very humble origins. My father was a carpenter in construction, my mum was a nurse, but I was pushed into kind of cultural, like museums and art galleries, and started art very, very young. And then obviously, as you learn through school and university, I understood that actually I was very practical-minded. So I like solving problems. I like creating beautiful things, but also solving problems. But actually, one of the most important steps before I took up the Leia studio is my experience in working in other studios. So I worked in 3 or 4 quite big industrial design and strategy studios in and around London. I did this for 3 or 4 years, and while I was doing that, I was in the basement of my apartment making prototypes of furniture and lighting and objects. Most of them were pretty bad, and I look back and I was like, I can't believe I spent that much time in a basement spray painting something. But what it allowed me to do was 2 things. Experience of working in other agencies, big agencies, taught me to be robust, taught me to be able to work hard, long hours, focusing on trying to make a product better. I could never have done and set up the studios I have without that experience. But the other thing it taught me is that I wanted to find my own style. So in a way, what I'm going to talk to you about today combines my background and my experience with some of my personal point of view of what I believe is good design. Before I set up Leia, I had a studio under my name. So Benjamin Hubert was a studio for 5 years after the previous experience. Very small, very boutique, 3, 4, 5 designers working with furniture, lighting, accessory brands. Basically, because they're the types of projects you can do quite accessibly. You know, you can develop them in a shorter time. They don't rely on lots of technology and lots of complexity. And we did this for about 5 years for the likes of Capellini and Poltrona Frau and, Moroso and some of these companies. So we come on to Leia. So Leia was set up 3 years ago. And
as a studio, we love playing with materials. It's one of the ways we started 5 or 6 years ago. And we're always asked which one is our favourite material. And my answer is always the same, which is whichever material solves the problem best. But if you were to ask me to pick one, it would be no materials. It would be to design a service. It would be to design a system and a service which helps people in their lives that doesn't require hardware. So we do a lot of work in the digital space in the studio, and it would be in that arena. So when we're working on a project, we don't design anything to start with. We ask a lot of questions. We get a lot of insights from the stakeholders in the project. It can be the consumer, it can be the retailer, it can be the brand that's manufacturing. We get all of these voices, and then we find the opportunities around that. So identifying opportunities from the insights to give us values that we then try and embody in features and formats of the project. So we're very strategic in our approach.
The whole project was about a circle. You rotate on the bar stool, it goes up and down. So the whole idea of a circle became part of the language. But we needed a footrest to come forward. So we wanted another circle, and it's a bit like a hula hoop. The seat and the base are like a mirror image. It's the same shape, perfect symmetry. And then the asymmetric footrest then breaks the form. Then we continue underneath. We have a button that's also a circle. So everything is super, super controlled, all based around this idea of rotation. It's all aluminium, super sustainable, recyclable, lightweight, die-cast, long-lasting and hard-wearing, so that when it's in a contract environment, a restaurant, a bar, a hotel, it's something that can last 10, 15 years. Best sustainability is for products that you use a long time. So it has to be a language that you don't get tired of it. But also the material selection needs to be good. The build quality needs to be that you can build it up easily, you can take it apart easily, and then you can recycle it. So all of those things are the message of sustainability. Ideally, hula should be used anywhere. But if I could choose places, then the interior design would be minimal, it would be sensitive, it would be clean, it'd use natural materials. But ultimately, this is a very neutral product, so it can go in lots of different spaces. But my personal style is modernist minimalism. For any designer, the most satisfying moment in a project is when people use it. When they use it every day, when they're sitting on it, when they're interacting with it. I think, design is for everybody. Design is to be used, and the best proof of good design is lots of people using it and enjoying it.
today I'm going to talk to you for about, let's say, 45 minutes about Leia. And then I would like to see if we can open up for some questions. I'm going to cover the things that I think are interesting, but I'm more interested in what you think. So I'd like to hear some questions at the end. We'll do about 10 minutes. So maybe as we go through, you can think about the types of questions and thoughts you might have, and we'll try and do 4 or 5 questions at the end. So, Leia, we're going to talk about a big range of projects today. It's going to be a cross-section through our approach, a process, the working life in the studio, and then diving into a big range of projects. Everything from kind of super analog furniture and beautiful objects to technology, both hardware and software, all the way through to experiences and installation. But we're going to start with a short video just introducing the studio. So a very calm, soft start to the talk, and just gives you a little hint around some of the things we're going to talk about today. But first, let's talk about the studio. So the breakup and layout and makeup of the studio, we're about 25. So I'm the creative director, then we have senior people across strategy, industrial design, digital design, and then some architecture. And within those teams, we have engineers, we have research people, and basically we combine very multidisciplinary teams. So the teams will be something between 3 to 8 people, depending on the complexity and length and challenges in the project. Very young, very international, very dynamic team, highly motivated. I think one of the things that characterizes the team is their motivation. They're all super ambitious. They always want to make the project better than anything they've seen before. And when we're allowed to, when we're able to, when projects work in the right way, we tend to try and push as much as we can. So in terms of the studio, this is super photoshopped, by the way. It doesn't really look quite like this. It's nowhere near as clean and clear and as simple, but basically 25 of us sit along big, long desks, collaborating, talking, exchanging ideas in an atmosphere of creativity. So we have lots of prototypes, lots of tests, lots of kind of failures as well. I think, we'll talk a lot today about projects that in some degree have been successful, either in sales or communication or innovation or IP or patentable and things like that. But also, the studio is a place to fail fast. So, lots of iteration, lots of collaboration to test and to quickly fail. It's obviously a bit of a mantra to fail quickly, fail first, fail fast, but it's really true. Our process is super iterative. We have lots and lots of steps in our design process, from sketching, from model making, from rendering. We do a lot of simulations in 3D, and we do a lot of prototyping. And this is a bit of a corporate slide, so I apologize for that. One thing that's quite important is to understand the cross-section of the studio. So most design agencies, at least in my experience, work in two areas. They sort of do the super cool Milan accessories and furniture and lighting, and super kind of lifestyle-y, but quite analog. And then you get agencies that do the strategic work and the deep dives into industrial design and digital design and more of a consultancy model. What Leia does is it brings these two worlds and it puts them together. So we do the soft stuff for the kind of Vitras, the Herman Millers, the Fritz Hansens, that you might live with for a long time. So a piece of furniture that you might have for, let's say, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. But we also do the really strategic stuff about tech and what's coming next in terms of that technology roadmap and how people are living and behaving for the likes of kind of the Googles and Nikes and Samsungs. So we have those two worlds. But where I thought I would start is a project that probably defines that transition between the studio I had under Benjamin Hubert to Leia.
So I'm Benjamin Hubert. I run a design studio called Leia, and we've been working with Moroso for the last 4 or 5 years. This product is a new family of products developed from a prototype a couple of years ago. And it's a story of textiles. It's a story of technical textiles, about trying to create shape and pattern and form with a really innovative Austrian textile company. We knit, so it's about knitted textiles to give you tension and shape, and something quite new really. And this combination of a hammock and a lounge chair to come together form a very new collection for Moroso. So I run a studio called Leia, and we're a team of 12 designers, and we do lots of types of work, from consumer electronics to working with charities to developing furniture. We have a passion for innovation, materials, construction, and creating some really new iconic pieces, including this cradle collection.
I'm Benjamin Hubert. I'm the creative director and a designer at Leia, an industrial design firm in London. As a designer, a very kind of analytical approach to society and how the world is changing. Maybe it's about sustainability, maybe it's about shipping, maybe it's just about choice. But all of these things tie into the bigger macro trends that are happening in the world. The way to guarantee motivation is to have some aspect of newness, some aspect of pushing boundaries. The challenge was around trying to create a new small piece of furniture following the DNA of some of the legendary pieces of furniture that Fritz Hansen produced, and then really trying to introduce a new point of view.
Studio was really the kind of the communication and the excitement and the coverage. First was about materials. So pushing the potential of materials. Lots of designers that you speak to yourselves, I'm sure, do a lot of this kind of work. But we made it our mantra, so material driven. And one of the projects that helped us to be on the map, I suppose, was a project that we did self-initiated, but in the end with the Design Museum in London, was the idea of taking a table and transforming people's perception of it. So people love tables, they're crafted, timber, and so we took that idea of timber, we made it 3 millimeters in veneer, and then we corrugated it. So we corrugated it like you do plastic or metal to give it strength and to keep it light, so it's hollow. So it's very, in a way, quite a one-dimensional project. Let's make a table lighter and stronger and use less materials. But it epitomized the design process before we set up Layer. Material-driven smartness with materials and construction. This was the Ripple table. So the first thing I'm kind of going to go through in the studio is, we talked about these two ends of the spectrum. So we're going to talk first about the softer furniture, lifestyle, accessories, the things you live with for a bit longer, to talk about how we work on those types of projects. As I said, this is one of the ways that we started the studio, one of our passions as well. And we've been lucky enough to work for some very influential brands and forward-thinking. And the first project I'll talk about is the chair we did for Fritz Hansen. So this was a project, and if I just play this, I'll talk at the same time, there's no music, that took quite a long time, so 3 years to make a chair. And typically, this is how we prototype. So we iterate and we change and we modify, we upgrade, we change the direction, we look at construction and the way you connect things. And when you work with a company like Fritz Hansen, obviously historical Danish furniture brand, and particularly in Denmark, culturally, iterate a lot. So all the fine-tuning and all the detailing you pour over. If I'm being completely honest, 3 years is too long to design and develop a chair like this. But when you're in this world and when you're working with these brands, you end up, it's like a labor of love. I can't tell you this is the world's most commercial project we ever do, but it's a labor of love. And I think having that passion in the studio softens the edges of being a design agency. So this chair was a modular system, legs, seats, plywood seat, and injection molded backrests. So quite simple, but the idea of modularity, so when architects and interior designers specify the piece of furniture, they can choose the modules and have an expression they can control. Not a revolution. But for Fritz Hansen, it was an important story to bring the architects and the interior designers into the design process and engage them with the brand and the product more heavily. So basically, this is a polycarbonate, slightly transparent, 10% transparent, so it's more glass-like when you see it, because the problem with plastic sometimes is the value perception. So we try to challenge the value perception, elevate the material by combining it with kind of plywood elements. So the seat element being plywood, then you can choose different backrests, different seats, different leg combinations to essentially tailor the piece of furniture to your expression. So Fritz Hansen, good partner of ours, we work with them quite a lot. We obviously pour a lot of time into this process. But as I said, it's a great, honestly, some of it is a great communication tool. Everybody loves a chair. Do we need another chair? Have we solved the problem of sitting down a long time ago? Of course. I always think the discussion around do we need another chair is a bit silly. Because I think actually they're beautiful labours of love that people fall in love with and keep for a long time. And yes, there are lots out there. Yes, the market is saturated. Yes, you shouldn't do too many as a designer. But they're great expressions. And actually, when you design products like this, it's a very strange product to design. It's one of those products that you really sit in and surrounds you. There's not many products that really talk about the whole body. So a chair is a really challenging thing. One of the other pieces of furniture was Axel. So this was a piece of furniture for a British brand. We don't work with many of them, not out of choice, but because manufacturing in the UK is not what it was. But Axel was this idea of creating something with a really strong signature, something you could identify from 10, 15 meters away, and then pulling that through into the manufacture. So thinking about recycled materials, die-cast aluminium, recycled plastics, biodegradable plastics, to have something that was super striking, super identifiable, but also had a fluidity and flow to it. So the idea that you can bring that industrial story in, but also you bring the softness and the humanness and the gentleness of the curves and shapes. Still technical, high performance. This is a bio-plastic. But also, it works very well in softer interior environments. When we design our products, we often design the launch as well. So one thing we've learned through our process is that obviously design is a powerful tool, But if you can't communicate a project, if you can't translate it to the audience, often it gets lost. So we design installations and exhibitions to heighten the experience of a product, even a basic product like a chair in some extent. So in this story, the story was a manufacture. So we used the Y-shaped elements that are from the leg, so it's the casting from the leg, to create an environment using mirrors, using structures, to highlight the brand's investment in manufacturing. We mirrored the ends so they became infinite when you looked at them. So really the story about recyclability and infinite use of materials. And there's a short video just to kind of show you some of the details. Okay, so, first introduction to a few pieces of furniture that we've worked on.
My initial interest in design, I think when you're young, you don't have any comprehension really what design is. Your introduction to creativity in terms of creating something three-dimensional or anything at all comes through art. And that really came through school, through my dad, and introduction to galleries and things like that. And it was a little bit later, towards the end of my school years and then into university, that I understood what design was, and then a little bit later industrial design. Quite big steps in a short amount of time. I think it's to do with work ethic and installing that in the people that work in the studio. And it's about competency as well. We are a small studio and a young studio. There's quite a lot of knowledge here. I think timelessness is something we talk about a lot in our work. It's about things that are robust, things that are you would like to live with on a day-to-day basis for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And it's a bit of a different train of thought. I think, for example, if we take a chair, it's about how well made it is, how comfortable it is. My background is in very robust industrial design where we would be briefed very heavily. And I do believe that as an industrial designer, if you give somebody a set of constraints, you push the limits. If you give somebody free rein, you're never really pushing anything, you're just doing a little bit here and a little bit there. So I'm a firm believer in getting a really good, constructive brief, which sets a very hard challenge for us. One of the things we do in the studio is we do a lot of research into materials technology. It's something that's providing a lot of new opportunities in terms of engineering capabilities. Is it lighter? Is it stronger? Is it faster? And I think this is the way we've seen a big change in the last few years in terms of composites and things like that. I think process is a fairly slow-moving thing. I think design is an ever-changing thing. Some things are always true in terms of, is something beautiful and functional, but I think it's about this idea of smartness and intelligence and how it adapts to the changing world around us.
I think one of the other reasons we had a good relationship with brands, because I'm personally very interested in textiles and fashion, despite the fact I wear completely monochrome outfit, and it literally is an outfit. You should see my wardrobe. It's all like black, 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 grey, black, 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 black. But we're really engaged in fashion and textiles in the studio. And we have a good relationship with Moroso, big Italian furniture brand. And when we work on things like this, we fall in love with the way they're made. I think our passion for process and construction also defines us. So this was a project that we looked at. I'm sure a lot of you here snowboard and ski. We looked at using polyurethane tape to make a waterproof piece of furniture. Super simple idea. But what it gave it is an expression, an identifiable, but still really simple. And we talk about construction and materiality through the project. And one recommendation I would always make is form strong relationships with a small group of brands. One thing we're really committed to, long-term relationships, because they're easier and they're more fruitful in the end, and the products end up being better as you build that bond. We've worked with Moroso on lots of things, 3D knitting, super smart use of textiles, less but more, so less textile, less construction, less material, more sustainable. The whole idea of thinking about textiles as, your Adidas or Nike Flyknit, the whole kind of thing translating to a piece of furniture. It's all made in one piece. So no stitching, no sewing, no joining, no labor. All of the textile is completely one cover despite the complexity. So, moving on from furniture. So we talked about that sort of soft end. As I set up Leia, one of the reasons we changed from Benjamin Hubert to Leia was, if I'm being honest, we were being asked to do too many of the same types of projects. So So many brands were coming to us asking for a chair, not even giving us an idea of what they wanted, just another chair. And it became very one-dimensional. As I said, it's not my background, furniture. My background is strategy and industrial design. So we wanted to find more challenges. So Leia represents more than just a personal point of view. And one thing we decided to do was give back. So about 25% of the studio works on low bono, pro bono, charity-based projects. We stopped doing so much furniture work and basically used some of that time for these projects. So that horrible image was the world of charity collection boxes. OEM, off the shelf, they're all the same, it's a different color, and very classic industrial design project. So shape and semantics, communicating the nature of the engagement with the product. So the whole idea, sketching, model making, to find a gesture of thanks in a hardware product. So we could have gone digital with this, but the cost and clients weren't really in that place. And basically the whole thing is about saying thank you. So a nod of thanks in the form of the product. So when you donate some money, you're like, okay, there's a relationship I'm forming with the product, and it stands out. I think the problem you could see before is nothing stands out. So using industrial design to try and differentiate between other things on the market. And this is a very simple example of that. No digital, no strategy really, just form and semantics. And this is basically what they had before, and this is a new one. And actually what happened when this went out into the world, into the wild, which is always a proof, a super strong test of the success of a product. It raised 80% more donations for the cancer charity than the previous product. So, you know, the power of design can engage in an audience more strongly. And so this is one of the turning points from the two studios I talked about. But one of the things I wanted to talk about while I was here was this sort of other end of the spectrum. So talking about tech. Now, there are lots of people that do it. There are lots of brands that do it. There's lots of people that engage with it. And it's one of those quite complex subjects, particularly in the wearable market. Obviously, the crash of Jawbone and the successes of Fitbit, the market has changed a lot in the last 10 years. The boom of wearables is probably behind us to an extent until technology changes to allow us to do smaller, more integrated, more subtle products. So, when a tech brand comes to us, we like to find something that is truly ownable and that differentiates them. So this project, it's not for a brand you've probably ever heard of, but I'm sure lots of you in here are sports fans. So if you've ever watched Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, then you probably notice on the back of their shirts a little pocket. So right at the top, a little pocket on the back of the shirts. In that pocket is a bit of tech, GPS, various tracking elements. And it's by a brand, pretty much like the biggest brand in that market is called Catapult. They're actually an Australian brand. And they provide this little product like B2B, so they sell it into professional teams. It's super horrible, it's really ugly, it's got a big button on it, but it performs extremely well. So they approached us and said, okay, we've got this really great system, we've got this very smart product, and it allows them to track movement, speed, distance, collisions and impact, coverage of the pitch, and player load, basically how a player is performing. It's super smart. So they came to us and said, okay, look, we've got this quite ugly, slightly broken technical system working with professional teams. Can you help us create a consumer product? And create a brand. So this is Player is the brand. Catapult is like the mothership that kind of controls it. So this project and this product was born, I guess, we worked on this for about 14 months, quite a quick tech project, but completely re-engineered the product. So basically, this product is an induction charging tray and a little bit of tech. It's about this big, something like that. So about 50 or 60 millimeters by about 30 or 40, so super, super small. One of the challenges was finding a language that was simple and approachable, but also strong and athletic. So the whole idea here was about kind of softly muscular. So this idea of having something that, has an angularity to it, has almost a feeling of aggression to it, but is still quite neutral. Sports and competitiveness need to be kind of portrayed through wearable tech in this area. And actually, it's a little different to some of our other work. You'll see that most of our other work is a little bit more neutral, a little bit more lifestyle, a little bit more based on pure geometry. But basically, that wasn't suitable for this product. And we're very conscious of the partners that come to us, that we work extremely closely with them. So we understand what they want, what their needs are, their brand values, and we try and translate that. So it's not how we used to work, where it was sort of like my personality stamped on a product. This is very much pulling the personality out of the brand and the type of people using it. Product is also, we did the branding. I was wondering what was coming then. I was like, why is there a blank paper? And there's the branding. So we did the branding, the same thing, softly aggressive, but also super kind of neutral and controlled and very kind of modernist in its typeface selection. But this product, it's so easy to see it, is for aspiring football players. So what you can also do is benchmark your game against the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, and you can see how they're performing and then see basically how badly you're performing and like how you might, one day get to that level. So this product was a 3D knitted vest that we created. Again, we work a lot in 3D knitting all through the world. Super minimal, really lightweight, takes the heat from the body and has the pocket integrated in the back.